Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Dr. Glenvo, and man, I have the guest for you. So before I introduce you to our next guest, let me ask you a few questions. What if I knew a person who created $1 million business selling kombucha kits online? Would you want to meet that person? And what if that same person has been dubbed by Russell Brunson, one of the biggest digital entrepreneurs in the world? He dubbed this man a genius. Would you want to meet this person? And finally, this person is someone who is now coaching people and helping other companies grow, and he's got so much to share. Would you want to meet this person? Well, that person is here today. His name is Dave Lindenbaum. He's a digital entrepreneur. He is a super dad, family man. He's also a rapper part-time. He's here today. Dave, what's up?
What's up, Glenn? Don't go breaking my heart.
I love it, guys. So here's the thing. I've been telling Dave, I've been trying to get this guy on my podcast. He's doing so many amazing things, but I like to call him almost like a muse, right? You just come and you just hang out with him, and automatically you have all these ideas in your head. But I'm gonna let him kind of talk to you about his story. So Dave, I kind of led off with the fact that you are like a financial analyst and then you turned into a digital entrepreneur. Talk about like what you're doing today. What was something that really got you started in the digital entrepreneur world? And just let us know about that.
Yeah, first off, what a delight to be on your show, man. Thank you for having me. I will try to come up with a couple more fun word plays on your last name. All right.
Dave, yes. How did it all start here, man? You were telling me you were the most inappropriate financial analyst.
In JP Morgan history. I'm sure if they took a vote of all shareholders, employees as well, I would be voted. The high school yearbook to have that. I would be the most likely to, have some HR problem of inappropriateness. and so, I'm curious, I'm sure some people could relate to this story. Growing up, I was all the things you're supposed to be doing. I was a class vice president, played on sports teams, good grades, AP classes, went to school for marketing and business, and then got an internship for JP Morgan. And then eventually it's a 2-year financial analyst program in Manhattan. And I was doing all those things. And all the time in the back of my brain, I was oh man, I always enjoyed creativity. My sister was the creative person in the family. And I always when we were super young, I loved playing with her and doing shows, for our parents, but I kind of tucked that away or it would be applied to whatever I was doing. So even, like I said, I was the most ridiculous, inappropriate financial analyst. Going to work, I'd be in the elevator and everybody's the nice shirt and tucked in. Right before the elevator would open, I'd untuck my friend's shirt and run down the hallway or something like that. Just horrible stuff. But what I discovered even back then was people actually enjoyed that stuff, excitement, enthusiasm, a little bit off of autopilot played really well for me. I remember my boss one time, on a Monday, asked all the analysts, what did you do over the weekend? And everybody was oh, I read the New York Times reports on the stock exchange. And I studied this report. Or I came into work and he'd ask me and I'd be I went, played, party with my friends and we listened to this amazing band and I probably got drunk and I'm hungover right now. And he would call me in later in the afternoon and I felt I'm in trouble. And he's I'm hey man, sorry, the report's going to be ready, tonight because we worked a lot of long hours. And he'd be forget about that. Here, I have my other buddy who's a VP in Goldman Sachs. He's on speaker. Hey, tell him what you told me earlier today. And at the end of the day, I think people are people and people are also having kids now. We're still kind of our kids a little bit, for better or for worse, because grown-up temper tantrums are also pretty horrible. But also this idea of having fun and playing still lives inside all of us. I digress. So what made this switch? So this has been kind of building up my whole life, but then my first day of actual work, JP Morgan trained us for 2 weeks. We went to an offsite. Offsites were really big in corporate America. I'm not sure if they are now because I haven't really had a job for the last 20 years. But after these 2 weeks of training, we got assigned where we're going to be placed in the organization. And our first day of work was actually, and I haven't shared this with you, so I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but it was actually September 11th, 9/11, 2001. And so my first day of work, I took the PATH train from Hoboken, New Jersey into one of the towers, because that's where was my subway stop, to go to 60 Wall Street, where one of JP Morgan's buildings in the financial district. And the first plane has already crashed. They say that my PATH train was the last PATH train to make it in before they were able to communicate. And that definitely was, I would say, the trigger to realize, make a commitment to myself, which I still struggle with. I still restrict on doing all the things I want to be doing and in my heart, but I don't think there's a spectrum to it, but at least making the decision that there's more for me in this life than being behind a laptop, which is funny because now I'm talking to you being behind a laptop. But I get to wear a fun shirt to talk to people that I love. So,
but the thing is, it's on your terms, right? And again, I think a lot of times, so many entrepreneurs that we've had on the show, there's always that moment, right? Or maybe it's a series of moments that you get this kind of epiphany, hey, I think that I was meant to do something else. I was meant to do something more. I was meant to do something that really fulfills my soul. And again, that's what you're doing right now. And I absolutely love it, because right now you're not in the States. You're where?
Yeah, I'm in Israel.
He's in Israel, and he wants to be there, and he's working over there, and he's working with people like me and other people over in the States. And so I think that's so amazing. So, what's really cool is that, Dave, you kind of transition over and you open probably one of the most successful e-com stores. Talk about that. Talk about how you when you made that transition and you jumped into e-com, and we'll talk about your other stuff too, but talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So after 9/11, I made the epiphany is a great word, Glenn. So I had the epiphany of and at the time, and even today, it's even less about for myself that there's more for me, and I need to find work that's meaning. It was actually on the flip, the inverse of that, saying I don't need to be doing this. So I don't know exactly what I want to be doing, but I don't need to be doing this, that, and I could discover more. And if you're into personality types, I'm an ENFP and an Enneagram 7, so I have that kind of thing. Everybody's personality is going to be different, and motivations and things like that. Even after that, though, it still took me a year and a half to actually leave, which is so interesting, because sometimes making the decision, if somebody wants to, let's say, lose weight, they have that epiphany, but it still might take a little bit of time to actually have it one day you see it. I compare it to that, because I was still in that mindset, which also helps with the inappropriateness and ridiculousness, because once you realize, I'm not going to be here very long, which also counterintuitively, I kept getting raises and awards and stuff like that, which is hilarious. But a lot of times in life, it is like that. I wouldn't say the less you care, but the more authentic, I guess you could be, people recognize that as well. So it's something interesting there. Anyway, so the next challenge was for me to emotionally, let's say, make a change. I needed to physically make a change. And so I left New York to move to Los Angeles. I was a cross-country team tour director. And so we took kids, instead of going to summer camp, we took teenagers cross-country. We'd go camping with them, and then we'd go to cities. We stay in a hotel or something like that. And it was such a cool experience. And so when on this trip, I was in LA for the first time. I was like, wow, man, nobody works here. Everybody is we're on the beach on a Wednesday, again, summer camp stuff, but there were people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all enjoying the beach. I'm like, this is amazing. When I moved there, I found out that they're all unemployed actors and directors and writers and stuff like that. By the time I was this magical place, nobody works and everybody's eating lunch on the beach. And so I physically moved, which was a big deal for me. And so when I moved, I drove cross country, and my dad drove about half of the way, and then I drove the other half. And so this is super important, because at the time, the podcast, what were they even called? It's crazy. The iPod. Remember those things? Yeah, it's so crazy. Now it's even obsolete, but at the time it was the most cutting edge thing. So for my birthday, my parents got me an iPod, and I loaded it up. I torrented. So Dan Kennedy, I'm sorry. I stole a bunch of stuff from you on torrent, but I later bought a bunch of stuff, and so I'm sure it evened out.
It worked out. It worked out in the end.
Yeah, and Tony Robbins and Richard Bandler, NLP stuff. And so I literally had 21 weeks, 30 hours of a week of driving, of just immersion, of listening to this stuff. And at the same time, I was also learning about online stuff just by being in JP Morgan and I was also in information systems technology in college, which again, by the time I graduated, all the stuff I learned was outdated in terms of the coding, but the idea of that technology and the internet is super powerful. And so by the time I got to Los Angeles, I told my parents I was going to be an agent, like a movie star agent, just so they could like share with their friends. Like they don't feel like their son's like a complete disappointment because it's like, there's like, doctor, which I'm sure they'd be very happy with you, lawyer, banker, or maybe agent moving to LA. But truth be told, when I got there, I knew I wanted to work for myself in some capacity. And I really hit the bug on just like this idea that there's more out there especially with the NLP and Dan Kennedy, direct response marketing. When I got there, I had the idea that I was going to start a video company documenting the life stories of the elderly. And so you go to seniors, you interview them, and then that becomes a family heirloom that gets passed down instead of the wedding ring. Some people, I'm sure, would prefer the wedding ring, but having this thing lived on, it came to me in a dream, which is nuts to this day. I kept thinking about the movie When Harry Met Sally. In that movie, they interview couples.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I thought that was scripted. They were actors. It turns out they were not. There was just real people that they used. I just thought it was so touching. And so I thought, well, know your market, right? You got to know your audience and know where your market hangs out. And so as soon as I got to LA, I went in to volunteer at a senior living center, because I figured that is where, LA finding video people would be no problem. Now I got to go. So like just going back to marketing, you got to know your audience and know where your audience is hanging out. Seniors with, maybe have some disposable income are hanging out in Beverly Hills Senior Assisted Living Senior Center. And so I walked in there, but when I gave them my resume, it had like JP Morgan. I interned at Disney World. I had and they're like, do you want a job? Like, can we just hire you? Like, we don't want volunteers. And I said, yes. And so then I became the most inappropriate human resource director of the Beverly Hills Assisted Living Center, because I cannot manage people. I have enough hard time managing myself.
Yeah.
When I was there, I did meet somebody who was volunteering Friday nights. It was a Jewish community center, so he did Friday night services. I came up with an exercise program called stretching and kvetching. Kvetching means to complain. So like we'd have an exercise. It's like inhale, arms come up, and then shake them and look at the sky and say, why couldn't my son be a doctor? And then exhale, arms come down. And it became like the most popular exercise class. And I know this is not related to e-commerce, but it will be, because this gentleman who would volunteer, they would tell me all the time that I looked like him. In fact, sometimes the residents would confuse me with him. And so I wrote it off as dementia, right? I mean, these are older people, like, all kidding aside, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm sure. Yes, I'm Steve, that's the guy's name. And then one day when I was leaving, he was coming in and we met, and we just had this instant attraction to each other as entrepreneurs. And he said, when I'm not and he did look uncanny. Like we did look like,
well, it's almost like a doppelganger. Like you walked out and you're like,
yes. And it's funny, Glenn, because the whole time I'm like, oh, these guys have dementia. They're just saying things. Oh, yes, I'm Steve. Yes. Oh, yes, I'm Steve. Yes, I volunteered yesterday. And we kept missing each other. And like they were saying the same things to him. And he was my first mentor. I know this is coming. I know this is a long story, but he had a tea company that he was just starting out. And he sold me on becoming his first hire. And then all of a sudden the worlds collided, because everything I learned from Dan Kennedy with direct response and learning to sell online and the technology of computers came about with his tea company, because his tea company was primarily serving restaurants. He had an online presence, but it was very small. And so I came in and I learned from him as an entrepreneur that you just have to take the flag and put it in the sand and be like, I'm the tea guy. That business has gone on with tremendous success. He's in Wolfgang Puck restaurants. He's in Caesar's Palace, multiple hotels in Vegas, as well as growing his online presence. And so it was a special place for my heart. And that experience helped me launch my first business, which was getkombucha.com. At the time, I was drinking, I had acid reflux, discovered this thing called kombucha, which is like this fermented hippie tea drink, combined with now working for a tea company and my love for e-com and solving my own acid reflux problem. I drank one of these bottles one day, and it was like the Red Sea parted. I had like the best bowel movement of life. I wasn't like throwing up in my mouth anymore. And the only problem was, and you as a doctor might appreciate this, kombucha at a Whole Food store cost more than my copay for my acid reflux medications because of the way insurance works, which is insane. And so I was also making my own beer back then. Again, hey, I'm in LA, living in Santa Monica. So I learned how to brew my own beer. I said, I wonder if I could learn how to brew my own kombucha. And then I started selling kits on how people can make it themselves at home. And so that's what Get Kombucha was. We became the #1 kombucha kit company in America, which is super blue ocean. We want to talk about a niche, and that led into the DIY space, DIY gift kits. We're the #1 hot sauce making kit company in the world. And that actually about 6 months ago, we sold those businesses and already started investing in some other e-commerce and then started consulting as well. So that catches you up. It's a lot. That's like,
no, it's amazing stuff. And again, I mean, guys, I could sit here and I could just listen to them all day. Right. And I've heard some of these stories and it's just so amazing. And the thing is that, sometimes you just, you have that epiphany, but also it's the connections you make, right? And that's something like we're like kindred spirits here, right? Like, it's all about the connections, all about meeting those people, and those meetings that you get, it opens the doors for what's possible, right? So again, like he's done these things, but he's also coaching entrepreneurs. I mean, Dave is, again, if you're not inspired, just sitting here, just listening to him, right? I don't know what's going to inspire you, So, for those who are listening, Dave, and they're thinking, okay, I want more of this guy. I mean, look, guys, you can Google, you can go on YouTube, you'll get so much, so much stuff about him. But Dave, if people want to learn more from you, or they just want to know what you're doing, like, what's like the best way? Like, what's the best way to kind of follow?
Yeah. You? So I told Glenn before this call, I'm like, I feel horrible. And I want to be like, I'm good. So I don't have like I am so fulfilled and busy in my own businesses, and then the select few people that I'm working with, and then coaching and consulting for Russell. But you could seriously just hit me up on Facebook. I will do my best to say hi if you feel inclined. And the reason why I'm saying that is I think people need, if they really want to reach out to somebody, they could. But be creative about it. So if you go to Dave Kombucha Lindenbaum on Facebook, you could send me a message, make it cool. If you send me something in song, in other words, if you musically want to sing it to me, like, what's up, Dave? I heard you on Glenn's podcast. I'll be more in tune to respond. If not, another way is if you do have a online store or website or anything that you're selling, whether it's an info product or an e-commerce product, a course, something like that, and you have a funnel and you want to improve your checkout page, we have a mini $44 workshop called convertmyoffer.com. And you could go check that out.
Awesome. Yep. And again, you can go on YouTube, anywhere on social media. He's got so much content. It's amazing stuff. It's definitely worth your time to check it out. And again, he means it too. Literally just send him a message. But hey, the more creative, the better, because in a different life, he was doing jingles on Fiverr, but you know what? This podcast is not that long to get into that. Okay, Dave, I'm gonna just. We're gonna have to keep them. We want them to want more from you. We'll have to bring you back. But look, let's shift gears real quick, right? Let's shift gears. We do this really cool segment called the Big Entrepreneur 3. So I want to ask you a couple of questions here, and the first one is, since you're like a serial entrepreneur, you've been kind of in almost every business. Share a productivity tip that's helped you as an entrepreneur that could help someone else. Share a tip. It could be like any tip. It could be like waking up early. It could be drinking kombucha every day. Whatever it is, share a productivity tip that's helped you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, cool. And this is somebody who, my assessments, like I am not the highest in conscientiousness, but I'm also a high achiever, which is, so these are people that think they could do a lot more in a day and underestimate what they could do in a year, right? So having some type of, and I used to be like, this is all foo-foo, like having a mission statement, but just do the best you can. If you don't resonate with that stuff, if just writing down your 90-day goal and reverse engineering it, even if you don't get it perfectly, it just sets the tone. So that's more on the macro. And then more on the micro, like, know yourself. So I will do planners, or I actually got this from Julie. Julie, shout out. Julie just had like a sketch pad. And so more of the creative types, if you just like the doodling and hand drawing, it really helped. And also with the micro, schedule your time, because the minute you actually put your task in the same importance as your meetings. So meetings are always scheduled because, right, like we would need to schedule this for us to do it. But a task is like, I'll do it whenever. For myself, unless it's actually scheduled, it will do two things. One, it will you won't forget about it because it shows in your timeline, but chances are you're grossly underestimating how long it will take you to do that task. And so if you booked 30 minutes for that task and then it ends up taking you 3 hours, what's going to happen is over time, you're going to self-calibrate. And so something's got to give. So either you are going to book more time for your tasks, which means you have to say no to more things of other tasks, or you're going to just say, what is the actual goal of this task and MVP it? In other words, I'm going to spend the 30 minutes not doing the task, but managing somebody else to do the task. Or I'm going to realize that I don't actually need to do this task, or I'm going to just do good enough is better than perfect type model. And so it's going to, and so then the next time you go to plan your tasks, you're going to be much better. And then you start really crushing life, so to speak, when you're able to predict how long the task will take. And so you say, cool, this task, I was going to say 30 minutes, but it's actually take an hour. And then it actually takes an hour and not 2 hours.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I actually, that is like amazing. That's something I'm actually going to use from now on, because that's what I do on my schedule. I have tasks, recordings, meetings and whatnot. And then, I don't schedule my tasks, and I just assume like I'm going to do it in how much time. I love that. I'm actually going to do that myself. That's money. That's money. I love that. Now, obviously, you talked about your schedule and whatnot, and maybe that's a tool that you really like. But I'm going to ask you anyways. Share a tool, like it could be digital, it could be non-digital, it could be that notebook you just pulled up. But share a tool that's helped you as an entrepreneur, an actual tool.
Yeah, I think Loom's been really, really helpful, or any type of screen recording. And so I use it. So like one of my things is like innovation and creativity, blah, blah. So I'm sure most people, when they talk about Loom recordings, they're talking about internal, possibly. Like it's great to do an SOP. So my integrator on my team would say, do the task, record it, and then send it off and trust your team to figure it out or go back, rather than trying to break down the steps because blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. But you could use Loom or screen recordings in so many other ways. And so I'll share one way that I've been using it. And Glenn, I'm sure you'll appreciate this because you're a people person and a connector, is I use Looms as on the front end. So in a business for customer support, I would use Looms way back for Get Kombucha when I was my customer support. By the way, little side nugget, I was Maria from customer support. I need to be honest here. So you get a couple of things. One, you could play good cop, bad cop, like hey, this is Maria from customer support. Dave authorized me to send you this $20 gift card, blah, blah. You could also live out your fantasies of becoming another person and a different sex, maybe. Whatever you want, babe. It's a 2-for-1. But when I started doing the Looms, I couldn't really do that anymore. But the cool thing is like Maria would be like, hey, Dave sent you the Loom video, or Dave side. At the time, I was using a different software. But the idea is you get to communicate with somebody on a personal level. They get to see your face, or you could walk them through something. So if somebody had an issue in ordering, I would say, hey, this is how you ordered. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if you saw on our website, you could leave us a review. You just click here. So you could do a pace and lead. And the same thing can be done with reaching out to Dream 100 people, reaching out to connecting with people. I've done Looms for people's happy birthdays. It's funny. It's a technology that a lot of entrepreneurs are like, yeah, it's been around forever, screen recording. But as soon as you come out of the marketing world or the business world, if you shot a screen recording for your friend for his birthday and had just typed out cool stuff or talked or shared a YouTube video, a screencast talking, there's so much cool stuff. So think about, so that's a tool, but the meta is what's a tool that you're currently using that you could use in other aspects of your business and get leverage out of that. And then the last one is try to have less tools, less techie stacks, and then get more out of each techie stack, because you lose a little bit of brain space going into like each dashboard, logging in, logging out. And so most of, like, for instance, Google Drive, just Google the suite of Google stuff that you could do alone is you could get probably 5 times more out of it. And you don't need the fancy new app that does a to-do list. If you could do it in Google, if you're already using Google, already used to it, already whatever, like cross promotes to your other devices, blah, blah, blah.
Wow. Guys, if you notice, Dave is really good at over delivering. I mean, that's awesome, man. I never thought about using Loom in that capacity. That's awesome. Again, that's something I use all the time with my team, but now using as a way to connect with people, that's next level stuff. Okay, Dave, so I'm going to give you this question. This is the question that stumps everybody, right? Because it's almost like asking you, like, which one of your kids is your favorite, right? It's like super hard. So you got to share one, right? And I'm going to say this, let's do the first book that pops your favorite business or philosophy book, and why is it your favorite?
Okay. best business book. The most recently, it was a book that Alex Sharfin gave me called The Goal. And it was really cool. It was done in almost a story about a manufacturing business, which is like interesting because it's really for like, most people that are following Alex are more in the digital age, but it was this concept of the big idea there was throughput versus output. And so it's told in the story of a manufacturing where let's say this manufacturing plant had all these material and they were building them, but it actually didn't get shipped to the customer. And so they were using these machines and it looked like they were being productive because they were doing a lot of output. But let's say there's 5 things to do. There was bottlenecks. That's another way to look at it as bottlenecks. And so the answer was actually don't run some of these machines, even though we're paying for it. The answer was let people sit idle and actually not work for a little bit because they're doing work that's actually getting in the way of getting something completely throughputed. And it was this interesting idea of, at the end of the day, us as entrepreneurs or personal life people, it's always better to get a throughput, an actual finished end goal, and then go back to optimizing it. And so output isn't the ultimate destination. It's the throughput, getting it actually in this book, but it can be applied to other things. The customer actually receives it or it gets shipped out of the space. Fascinating. But I got to go back to my OG favorite, which is a 4-Hour Work Week, because that book changed my life because it changed my mindset. There wasn't one specific tactical thing about it. It was just the time in my life. Get Kombucha started making money, not as much as I was making in banking, but I saw the potential. I bought the book. I flew to Vegas for a friend's bachelor party. And if you know me now, like I love having fun with my friends in Vegas for a bachelor party. But if you knew me then, before a beautiful wife and 2 adorable children, like, holy cow. And I'm revealing this for the first time. So Darren, Rob, Brendan, if you're watching, I apologize. But I actually faked that I had food poisoning or like diarrhea so I could stay in the hotel one afternoon and read this book while everybody was partying by the pool in the hotel. Because I was so immersed by it. So Tim Ferriss, if you're watching, and it just changed my mindset of this idea of like, you could do life on your terms, or you don't need to subscribe. There's so many ways to do life, and this like concept of the old rich and the new rich. And to this day, it's really stuck with me. As you can see, I'm literally talking to you in Israel. And most of my businesses are physical product businesses, and I was still able to move. Again, by creating a team to manage the 20 employees we have, the 2 warehouse space, the 3PLs that we have in Colorado. And so you could design your life with some intention, and it might take a little longer than you'd like, but you're going to be moving in the right direction. And that really, I think, is the thing that matters most.
I love it. I mean, that's a classic book. And the other book that you just talked about, that's something I need to put on my list as well. Okay, so we're going to shift gears again. I love shifting gears here. And, so many times when we see people online or we see what they're doing, you see all these amazing things, right? Like, oh man, Dave's got all these businesses. He's got this awesome life. He's got the life that he's always wanted, all these great things. You look at all these highlight reels that people post on like social media, right? But there's mistakes, right? All that success is paid by mistakes, paid by obstacles and whatnot. So this is what this next segment is: learning from the past. So Dave, I'm going to ask you for one, but name a mistake or talk about a mistake that was significant, but you learned something really important from, and share that with us.
Yeah. So not
just one. Okay. Because if you're like me, you probably have a whole bunch.
I know. Well, I would say not spending enough quality time with my dad, and we spend quality time together, but I was so, so that's my mistake that I learned from, but I could almost say I was influenced by that because I was so driven to be successful when I left the investment banking world. And that I use my business as a feeling of significance and almost proving that I could do it. But it cost me not so much my time, but my attention. So not being as present for the times that we did have together. My dad passed away about when I was 28, so 14 years ago now. And, now as a father, you don't value that stuff. Well, at least I didn't until I became a dad myself, and until that person is no longer here. Now again, hindsight's 2020 because I've become pretty successful, but I wonder though, if I'm really honest with myself, if could I have been even more successful, or at the very least, like there's so many other, like what a lot of times we think that the time and the attention we put into something is a zero-sum game, but there's probably a couple of things I did right in my business and that made me successful in spite of me wasting time on all these other things. And so it's just being more mindful. Wherever I am, be there and try to compartmentalize your life a bit more.
Man, I love that. I mean, that is an advice that, I mean, especially coming out of this pandemic and what's going on in our world, so many crazy things going on. I mean, just realize that, life is short, and really that time that you have with your loved ones. I mean, what's the point of working really hard, right? So again, I love that message. That's something that, I'm reminded of constantly, and you just sharing that story is just another reminder. And guys, we get reminded every single day the things that happen in our world, right? That life is short, and you got to make the most of the time here. So I love that, Dave. And I'm very interested with this follow-up question to see how you would answer this. And maybe it's going to be the same answer, but like, if you could go back in time, man, if you can get into that DeLorean or that hot tub time machine and go back in time and just talk to the younger Dave. And you know what? We can pick any version of yourself, right? Any younger version of yourself. But what would you had 1 minute before you had to go back to the future and you had to tell him something. What would you tell him? What would you tell the young Dave?
Yep. Have a end goal, have micro end goals in mind. And so I've always been frugal. So I've never lived above my means, but I never used my money. I just saved it. And so I would have told my younger self to know thyself, know what you're freaking great at, know what you love, the things that you're not great at or that you don't love, do what's needed to get you to a certain lifestyle. But then once you start making extra money, don't put it in the bank, invest it in your growth, whether it's hiring mentors and coaches. Like when I joined Russell's Inner Circle, my life exploded and on so many levels. And I waited, 10 years into my business before making an investment like that. But also investing in other people to do certain things like growing the business, and which again exploded once I had integrators, once I had great partners that complement my skill set. And so I did part of that. I lived below my means to have that margin of money, but then I never used it to invest back. It just built up. And really the best investment you could do is your own growth. So all of those things kind of fall under that.
I love that. And, you meet so many amazing people, right? I'm sure you're at conference and whatnot. People are always coming up to you, asking you questions, right? But I'm sure you've had this before, right? Someone comes up to you and says, all right, I love what you're doing. I want to do what you do, man. Can you explain to me how to do it, right? And most of the time when they ask you those type of questions, right, Dave, you have like maybe a minute or two until you have to off to the next meeting or off to talk to the next person, right? So what would you tell that young entrepreneur that just comes to you, grabs you and say, Dave, please, like, I want to do what you do, man. I want to do what you do, man. Like, give me like the first steps. What do you tell that young entrepreneur that's asking you there, that's pleading with you? Give some advice right there.
I would say it's a horrible idea. You do not want to do what I do. Because like, I did not know all this stuff would work out. And looking back, like, yeah, you connect the dots, but I tried a bunch of stuff and I've overextended, blah, blah. So I would say know thyself, because the reason why I justify that for myself is because I get off. I get emotionally, physically fulfilled doing all these things because I lose interest really quickly. So my shiny gold object isn't the new marketing plan. It's like the new business. It's like the new hobby. It's and I am driven by enthusiasm internally. But what I did notice is that I also attract people that appreciate my enthusiasm and when I'm working on projects. And so figure out something, I guess, that motivates you intrinsically, but also motivates others extrinsically, if that makes sense. And go with that.
I mean, I love that. Yeah. I mean, you're just pulling from the figuring out the why, right? And then, all the other little details, whether it's doing e-com, whether it's doing coaching or whatever, that's going to fill it in. as long as you have that, what you just said right there. I love that. So,
and the why doesn't, as you said, the why doesn't, that's a why, even though, and again, I'm only talking to the people because there's some people like, maybe you came out of the womb, you're like, I'm going to be a dentist, gaga. But like for many of us, myself included, I still don't have my why defined. Like I am going to go all in on this one e-com brand. It's more of like a feeling of why doing things that I get enthusiastic about and motivates and energizes and others as well. But it could be how that's expressed. There's like 1,000 million different ways, and that's good enough for me. Maybe one day I'm going to be like, I'm going to be a yoga instructor for the rest of my life. Namaste.
I love that. So guys, that's why, if you want to know why I was so excited, and if you want to know why I was so persistent about getting this man on this podcast, you can see why now, right? You can see right now. I mean, anytime I talk to him, I get super inspired. I get super energized. And just like what he was saying, and this is a perfect segue into what I'm going to say right here, is that's who you want to surround yourself with, right? People like that, right? People like Dave or someone very similar that bring you up, that uplift you, right? So it's all about that circle there. So with that being said, there's so much out there that you can get as far as content from Dave. If you go on YouTube and just type in his name, you're going to get so many more awesome interviews and whatnot. So again, Dave, the best way, if people just want to connect with you, they want to follow you, the best way is just go on social media and just say what's up or follow some of your accounts. What's the best way?
Yeah, just hit me up on Facebook. Unfortunately, I got locked out of my Instagram account when we moved to Israel as like a precaution. Like Instagram was like, "Oh, your number changed," and I never updated my number, so it's a blah blah. So I maybe create a new Instagram account. For the meantime, though, just go to good old Facebook, Dave Kombucha Lindenbaum. At the time, like if you could like keyword stuff. And so when I had the kombucha business, it would help our rankings and stuff, but then the name just kind of stuck. And if you have a checkout page online, whether you are selling e-commerce, a course, info product, a SaaS, you're an agency, as long as you have something that people enter their credit card online, check out convertmyoffer.com. It should take you to a workshop where I offer 4 loopholes you can do on your checkout page. We call them quadruples because there's 4 of them, and it's only $44 because I wanted to keep with the theme. And so I'll give you a little taste of like the stuff that I teach and the instant wins you could get. Remember, like before I built my team, I am not very ambitious. I'm a high achiever, but I'm not conscientious to do all the work. So I was always looking for quick wins, these loopholes, something that would take you 30 minutes and make a bigger impact on your business that maybe you'd be able to do in a whole year. And so I share those loopholes in that little workshop.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much for jumping on. I appreciate it. And guys, hopefully enjoyed this podcast. Make sure you follow him on social media. Check him out on YouTube. Go to that site. Take advantage of it. That's a super deal. I mean, I didn't even know about that. I want to take advantage of that myself. But Dave, thank you so much, guys. We'll see you guys next time.